I caught my best friend cheating with my spouse. I always thought betrayal was something that happened to other people. The kind of drama you see on TV or hear about in whispered conversations at dinner parties. But never to me. Never by the two people I trusted the most. It started with the little things. My husband, James, had been coming home later than usual. Always some excuse. Work ran late, traffic was bad, or he was just exhausted. Then there was Olivia, my best friend since college. She started canceling our plans last minute. Something came up, she'd say, her texts shorter than usual. I chalked it up to life just getting in the way, but deep down, an unease settled in my chest. One evening, I sat alone in our dimly lit living room, absent-mindedly scrolling through my phone. James had told me he was working late again, and Olivia had blown me off for the third time that week. A nagging feeling gnawed at me. Then, a notification popped up. Olivia's Instagram story. I clicked on it, expecting some generic photo of her cat or a coffee cup. But what I saw made my stomach drop. The image was blurry, a candlelit dinner setting, 2 glasses of wine, and a familiar-looking hand reaching across the table. James's hand. I recognized the watch I had gifted him last Christmas. My breath caught in my throat. My hands trembled as I took a screenshot. Could it be? Maybe it was just my paranoia. Maybe she was with someone else and it only looked like James. But I needed to know. I grabbed my keys and rushed out the door, my heart hammering in my chest. My mind raced with possibilities. What if I was wrong? What if this was all just a misunderstanding? But if I was right? I pulled up outside the restaurant Olivia's post had tagged. Through the window, I saw them. James leaning in, Olivia laughing, her fingers grazing his arm in a way that made my blood boil. It wasn't just friendly. It wasn't innocent. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. My best friend, my husband. The two people who were supposed to have my back. And here they were, acting like they were the ones in love. My vision blurred with rage and heartbreak. I could have walked away. Could have gone home and figured out how to process this later. But I didn't. I pushed open the door, my heels clicking against the polished floor. Heads turned, but I only saw them. James looked up, his face draining of color. Olivia froze, her wine glass halfway to her lips. Having a nice evening? My voice was steady, but my insides were screaming. James stammered, it's not what it looks like. Olivia swallowed hard. It's complicated. I let out a bitter laugh. Complicated? You mean betraying your best friend and your wife? The restaurant had gone silent. People were staring. I didn't care. James reached for my hand, but I pulled away like his touch burned. Please, let's talk. No? I took a step back. I trusted you both. And this is what you do? Olivia opened her mouth, but no words came out. She knew there was no excuse, no apology that would fix this. I turned on my heel and walked out, my heart shattered, but my dignity intact. That night, I packed my bags. James begged, pleaded, promised it wasn't serious, that he had made a mistake. But there are some things you don't come back from. As I walked out the door, I didn't look back. Betrayal doesn't deserve a second chance. And neither did they. I didn't cry. Not that night. Not the next morning. I was too numb, too furious, too disgusted. James called, texted, left voicemails begging me to talk. Olivia tried too, sending pathetic messages like, I never meant to hurt you. But I ignored them both. Instead, I focused on moving forward. I crashed at my sister's place for a few nights, grateful that she didn't push me to talk. She just handed me wine, put on reality TV, and let me sit in silence. But silence doesn't last forever. On the 4th day, I got a text from an unknown number. I need to tell you something about James and Olivia. It's important. My stomach flipped. I hesitated before replying. Who is this? A few seconds later, another message popped up. Meet me at Cafe Luna at 6 p.m. I promise this is something you need to know. I should have ignored it. I should have blocked the number and focused on picking up the pieces of my life. But curiosity, or maybe the need for closure, won. At 6 p.m., I walked into the cafe, scanning the room. A woman in her early 30s sat in the corner, nervously stirring her coffee. Her eyes met mine, and I could tell she recognized me. "You're Emily, right?" she asked. I nodded cautiously. "And you are?" She hesitated. "Sophie." The name meant nothing to me. "Okay. And you know something about James and Olivia?" I pressed. Sophie inhaled sharply. "Yeah, I was engaged to James before you were." My breath caught in my throat. "What?" She gave a humorless laugh. "We were together for 5 years. I thought we were happy, but then I caught him cheating with my best friend." I froze. The room tilted for a moment as her words sank in. Déjà vu. "You're lying," I whispered, even though I knew deep down she wasn't. She shook her head. "I wish I were, but James has a pattern. He always goes after the people closest to him. He makes you feel safe, makes you think you're his whole world, and then he rips it away." A sharp pain bloomed in my chest. James had done this before. I wasn't the first. I clenched my fists. "Why are you telling me this?" Sophie gave me a sad smile. "Because no one warned me, and I don't want you to waste another second on him." I sat back, my mind racing. James wasn't just a cheater. He was a serial betrayer, and suddenly I knew exactly what I needed to do. The next morning, I sent James a simple text. "Let's talk. Dinner at the house. Just us." He responded instantly. "Yes. Thank you. I love you." I smirked. Oh, this was going to be fun. That evening, I set the table for 2, lit candles, and put on a dress he always loved. I wanted him to think he had a chance. That maybe, just maybe, I was considering forgiving him. When he arrived, he looked nervous but hopeful. "Emily, I held up a hand. "Not yet. Let's eat first." I poured us both wine, pretending to sip mine as he downed his in relief. Then I spoke. "You know," I said sweetly, "I ran into someone interesting yesterday." James stiffened. "Oh?" "Sophie," I continued, watching his face. His expression flickered for just a second. Panic, guilt before he forced a chuckle. "I don't know a Sophie." I smiled. "Oh, but you do. She's your ex-fiancé, the one you cheated on with her best friend." James went pale. I leaned in. "Tell me, James, was Olivia your endgame? Or just another in a long line of betrayals?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I stood up. "You see, I'm done being another one of your mistakes, so I'd like you to leave." James blinked. "Wait, what?" You said we'd talk." I grinned. "We did, and now we're done." Then I walked to the front door and opened it. "You can go now." James stood there, stunned. "Emily, please." I crossed my arms. "Oh, and one more thing?" His eyes were desperate. "Anything." I smirked. "You might want to check your bank account. I transferred half of our savings to a new account in my name. Consider it compensation for my wasted time." His mouth dropped open. You can't?" "Oh, but I did." I shrugged. "Should have read the fine print when we merged finances, darling. Guess you never thought I would betray you." And with that, I slammed the door in his face. As I turned around, I let out the first real laugh I'd had in days. It wasn't just closure. It was justice. James banged on the door for a full minute before he finally gave up. I listened as his footsteps faded down the driveway, then let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. It was over. Or so I thought. The next morning, I woke up to a flood of messages. My phone buzzed with calls from mutual friends, unread texts from Olivia, and one particularly nasty voicemail from James. Emily, what the hell did you do? His voice was frantic. I checked my account. You stole my money. This is illegal. You can't just… Delete. I wasn't about to waste my energy on his tantrum. But Olivia's messages caught my eye. Olivia. Emily, please, I need to explain. Olivia. I never wanted this to happen. Olivia. James lied to me too. Olivia. Please meet me. Just once. I owe you the truth. A part of me wanted to block her, to erase her from my life like she had never existed. But another part, the part that needed to understand why, decided otherwise. We met at a quiet park later that afternoon. Olivia sat on a bench looking more disheveled than I had ever seen her. Her eyes were puffy, her hair a mess. For a split second, I felt a twinge of satisfaction. Good. She should be miserable. She looked up as I approached. Thank you for coming. Make it quick, I said coldly, crossing my arms. She swallowed. I was stupid, Emily. I believed him when he said you two were already falling apart. He made it sound like you didn't love him anymore, that you were just coexisting. I scoffed. And you just happened to fall onto his lap, right? She winced. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I swear I didn't plan for this to happen. He was relentless. I held up a hand. I don't need your excuses. I need to know one thing. She nodded. Anything. I narrowed my eyes. Are you still with him? She hesitated. Then her face crumpled. No, she whispered. A bitter laugh escaped me. He dumped you already, didn't he? Tears welled in her eyes, and that was all the confirmation I needed. Of course he did. James was a user, a manipulator. And Olivia, just like me, had been disposable to him. Wow, I said, shaking my head. You threw away our friendship for nothing. She sniffled. I know. A long silence stretched between us. Finally, I took a deep breath. I won't pretend this didn't destroy me, Olivia. You were my best friend, my sister in every way but blood, and you chose to betray me. She looked down. I'll regret it for the rest of my life. I nodded slowly. Good. Then I turned and walked away. I didn't hate her. Not anymore. She wasn't worth it. In the weeks that followed, I took control of my life. I got a lawyer, started divorce proceedings, and made sure James got nothing but regret. I reconnected with old friends, the ones who truly cared about me. I threw myself into work, into traveling, into living. And one evening, as I sat at a rooftop bar overlooking the city, sipping a glass of wine, I realized something. I was free. I wasn't the woman who had been cheated on. I wasn't the woman who had been betrayed. I was me again. And that was the best revenge of all. Months passed. The divorce was finalized, and I officially severed every tie to James. Olivia, predictably, faded into the background. She moved to another city, probably trying to outrun the mess she helped create. I thought I had seen the last of them. I was wrong. One evening, as I curled up on my couch with a glass of wine, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Unknown. Emily. It's James. Please don't block me. I just need to talk. I stared at the screen, my heart hammering in my chest. What could he possibly want now? Curiosity won over logic. I typed back, me. You have nothing to say that I want to hear. His response came instantly. James, I know I don't deserve your time, but I need you to know. I made a mistake. I snorted. No kidding. James, I lost everything, Emily. You, my job, my reputation. Olivia left me too. That last part made me smirk. Of course she had. They were never meant to last. Then came the kicker. James, I miss you. I actually laughed out loud. This man had the audacity to ruin my life, and now, what? He expected sympathy? A second chance? I decided to play along. Me. Miss me, or miss what I did for you? A pause. Then, James. Both. I shook my head. Pathetic. I agreed to meet him. Not because I wanted him back. God, no, but because I wanted to see the mess he had become. When I walked into the cafe, James was already there. He looked bad. Unshaven, tired, his once pristine suit wrinkled. Wow, I said, sliding into the seat across from him. You look like hell. He rubbed his hands together nervously. I deserve that. I tilted my head. So? Say what you need to say. James sighed. I know I hurt you. I lost control. I made the worst mistake of my life, and now I have nothing. I raised an eyebrow. Sounds like a you problem. He flinched. I don't expect you to forgive me. I wanted to see you, to remember what I lost. I leaned in, locking eyes with him. Let me make something very clear, James. You didn't lose me. You threw me away. You don't get to miss me now that you're miserable. He swallowed hard. Emily, I held up a hand. Number, we're done. And we always will be. Then I stood, dropped a 20 on the table for my coffee, and walked away without looking back. As I stepped outside, the weight on my chest lifted completely. For the first time in a long time, I felt nothing for him. No anger, no sadness, just freedom. And that was the best revenge of all. Walking out of that cafe felt like shutting the last door to my past. The moment I stepped onto the sidewalk, I inhaled deeply, filling my lungs with crisp evening air. For the first time in a long time, I was truly free. But life has a funny way of surprising you when you least expect it. A week after my final conversation with James, I found myself at an art gallery opening. My friend Lily had practically dragged me there, insisting I needed to get out and breathe in some culture instead of my ex's bad energy. As I wandered through the exhibits, pretending to admire abstract paintings I didn't understand, someone bumped into me. Hard. Oh, I'm so sorry, a deep voice said. I turned, ready to dismiss the apology, but froze when I met a pair of striking hazel eyes. The man in front of me was tall, with dark tousled hair and a 5 o'clock shadow that made him look effortlessly handsome. He was holding a glass of wine, his shirt slightly unbuttoned, his expression amused. Didn't mean to nearly knock you over, he said, smiling. I blinked. Wow. No worries, I managed, composing myself. It's an art gallery, not a wrestling ring. He chuckled. True, I just get a little too into my thoughts when I look at pieces like this. He gestured toward the painting behind me. It was a mess of colors, shapes, and seemingly random brushstrokes. I tilted my head. So, what deep interpretation do you have for this masterpiece? He grinned. Honestly, looks like someone dropped their palette and called it art. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. Finally, someone who admits it, I said. He extended a hand. I'm Nathan, by the way. Emily. Nathan studied me for a second, then smirked. Tell me, Emily, do you come to these things often, or did someone force you here against your will? I narrowed my eyes playfully. Why do you assume I don't love art? He leaned in slightly. Because you were staring at the exit 5 seconds ago. I burst out laughing again. Damn, he was observant. Well, since I'm already exposed, I said, crossing my arms. What about you? Art lover or just here for the free wine? He raised his glass. Guilty. Something about him felt easy, light. The complete opposite of the emotional baggage I'd been carrying for so long. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready for something new. Over the next few weeks, Nathan and I kept running into each other. At coffee shops, at a bookstore, even at a farmer's market. Coincidence? Maybe. Or maybe the universe was finally giving me a break. One evening, as we sat in a quiet little bar, sipping whiskey and sharing embarrassing childhood stories, he suddenly looked at me, his expression more serious. You know, he said, I don't know what happened in your past, but I can tell you've been through something. I tensed slightly. He wasn't wrong. But, he continued, I also see someone who's stronger because of it. I swallowed, caught off guard by his words. Emily, he said softly, whatever broke you before, it doesn't define you. And just like that, I realized something. James? Olivia? The betrayal? They were just a chapter, not my whole story. I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in ages. You're right, I said. Then I clinked my glass against his. To new beginnings. Nathan smiled back. To new beginnings. And for the first time in a long time, I truly believed in them. Life was good again. Or so I thought. Nathan and I had grown close over the past few months, and for the first time since James shattered my world, I felt like I could finally breathe. I was healing, moving forward, until he came back. It was a stormy evening when James showed up at my door. I had just finished cooking dinner when the loud knocking rattled my apartment. At first, I thought it was my neighbor, but as soon as I peered through the peephole, my stomach dropped. James. Soaking wet from the rain, his face pale, his eyes wild. I debated ignoring him, but something in his expression made me pause. I opened the door just an inch. What do you want? His breath hitched, and for the first time ever, he looked desperate. Emily, please, he rasped. I need to talk to you. It's important. I crossed my arms. We've already said everything that needed to be said. No. He shook his head violently. You don't understand. Olivia, a loud crack split through the air as thunder rumbled above us. James flinched. I rolled my eyes. What? She finally realized you were a garbage human? James stepped forward, lowering his voice. Emily, she's dead. The world tilted. I blinked. What? James ran a shaking hand through his wet hair. She was found in her apartment this morning. It was staged to look like an accident, but the police think it was something else. Murder. The word hung in the air between us, unspoken but heavy. My blood turned ice cold. James exhaled sharply. And that's not the worst part. He swallowed hard. Before she died, she left a voicemail. For you. My heart nearly stopped. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. James slowly pulled out his phone and pressed play. A distorted, static-filled voice crackled through the speaker. Then Olivia's frantic whisper, Emily. Oh God, I don't know who else to call. I think someone's following me. This isn't just about James anymore. I found something. Something bad. A loud crash sounded on the recording, followed by her sharp intake of breath. If anything happens to me, please don't trust... Silence. Then the recording cut off. I stumbled back, my pulse pounding in my ears. What the hell? I breathed. James clenched his jaw. She tried to tell you something before she died. And now, I think we're next. A sharp gust of wind slammed the door open wider, sending a chill down my spine. Somewhere in the darkness, I swore I saw a shadow move. Watching. Waiting. And then... the power went out. Pitch black. Silence. A single realization gripped my mind. This wasn't over. Not even close.